much, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have really had an excellent beginning and maybe even an end, really, in Guru Modi's address. There could not have been greater clarity on the fact that each of you successful family business creators, founders, first, second generation members have beyond just your business, and that is really unfolding a set of values which can actually make India realize its full potential. So I thought it was very inspiring. We'll try to build on that in this little discussion that we're going to have. So first, I'm not going to spend too much of time introducing everybody, because everybody in this room has one common theme, is that we're passionate about business, we're passionate about being entrepreneurs, and we're passionate about essentially growing our businesses so that we make an impact for our families and more importantly for our customers and for everybody else in our community, which is so well pointed out. Quickly, but Sukumar, and you can just add to what I said. He's from Shankara Pipes. He's built a absolutely fantastic business. I love him. He studied in a great college, Loyola, I think. Yeah. And he's really succeeded his father, the second generation member of the family, after studying in IIM. And over the last, 20-25 years perhaps, built it up to something like a 2,000 crore business, and amazing success story in this area of pipes and hardware. So that's really, I think, a fantastic story. Our next panelist, Abhishek, is exact contra to Sukumar. He came back, I think he was studying, and he came back and he sort of said to his father, I really don't think we should be working together, and went out and actually started a very interesting real estate business which is called Urban Tree. I think fantastic choice of words. And today, with his own capital, I understand, other than love, nothing else from father.
Yes.
Right? And has actually established the business so successfully that he's executing a 100 crore project as we speak. Pardon?
It's going to get to us the next 15 days.
Next 15 days, so bookings open at the end of this, I hope. So I think that's Abhishek for you. Very, very different contrast from Sukumar. And then there is Ranjit. Ranjit Pendurthi, if I pronounce it correctly, is from Archean. Archean is a $1 billion business today. And Ranjit, I think, and I have shared a common problem. And the common problem is that we never really, I think, questioned whether we should actually be joining the family business. We assumed that we wake up, we brush our teeth and move on with the day. And he kind of, like me, just came back and joined the family business. I'm not sure if we thought we should do it or not. And done an amazing job. Today, I think the business has grown about 100 times nearly. 100 times since you came in, and it's a 5,000 crore business. So another very interesting but quite opposite success story. And to sort of string it all together and tie up all the threads, we have Shri Tatwamasi Dixit, who's actually a very, very fascinating person. He's got a center which calls, strangely, actually not so strangely, Fabric. Family Business Research International Center. And he's very deeply involved in advising families about succession, governance, handling all the issues. And he comes at it like, in a sense, like what Guru Murthy does. He comes from a Vedic background. He's a very renowned, presidentially recognized scholar of Sanskrit and the Vedas. His father, in turn, is actually in Banaras, if I remember correctly, another very, very famous Sanskrit scholar. So we have timeless wisdom flowing through Mr. Dixit, and all of us really, in some sense, entrepreneurs of one kind or the other, various colors and stripes, but all sharing the same thing. So this is our panel today, and I know it's a long-winded introduction, but I thought it was good for us to know everybody in this room. Everybody is a very eminently successful person. So maybe one good way to start, because we've heard so much about half the BSE 250, I think it's 43% of the revenue of BSE 250 is actually from family and first generation businesses. And even the so-called 5% of India that we were maybe restricting ourselves to, Guru said 5% is listed companies, so maybe we are 10% of India. So much is from family, so that's a given. I don't think we in this room really need to be told anything about family businesses, because that's all we kind of thought all of India was. And even the big successful companies, one of them I understand is Subu's the board of even, actually runs like a family promoting driven business, and even though it's not really owned by a family. So I think that infects the whole this ecosystem in India, running into promoters. So let me start with you, Sukumar. So basically, let's talk about how did you decide to come back to the family business? I mean, you had IIM MBA. Yeah. You could have gone pretty much anywhere you wanted. What are kind of, was it something happened? Why did you join the family business?
Actually, my case is rather peculiar because I was really not interested in business. My dad was not really a businessman. He was working all his life, and at the age of nearing 60, he decided, enough is enough.
Amazing.
So he started a business at the age of 60, 59, 60. So that's when he decided that, okay, I've worked in the steel and tube industry all my life. Let me start doing something. And I was just in college at that time. And then he got into manufacturing of steel tubes in Bangalore, and I was under the typical pressure. I had no clue what, I was doing business, so there was no real family business background, so to speak. I didn't grow up in a business background. From childhood, a lot of the other people in the typical business, I always see them, from they're 10, 11, they're attending the shops or whatever it be. And so here it was a very sort of, I just went on professionally and I said, okay, I've got to educate myself. And we came from that kind of a background where education was a priority. And I finished my MBA and I said, okay, now I've got to look for jobs. Then there was this typical family pressure, some of you know Tamil, you're going to go and say you're going to work somewhere. That was my mother's pleasure. And being the only son, I had no option. So there's a lot of emotional blackmail, I would say. And I was sort of pressurized to join the business at that time. So, well, I guess way back 25 years ago, one said, okay, fine.
You've been encouraged, right? You've been pressurized, actually.
No, at that time I would honestly say, okay, so sort of a very euphemistic way of saying encouraged. But yes, no, on hindsight,
emotional blackmail is the main recipe in all Indian
Right. So that's pretty much how I got into business.
How did it feel? Was it business very small, so very easy to get in, or you had challenges listening to your father every morning?
No. Fortunately, actually the business started in not a very good note because my father was a professional and there's a big difference between being a working person or a professional in organizations and suddenly being a businessman. There's a big change in the mindset. So you join that and we were in a very different environment then. It was very controlled economy where steel was controlled with the Steel Authority, and for every little thing from full stop and comma you run to Delhi for the JPC, and then it was a middle-level company, so licenses were Delhi-based and so on, as Mr. Gurumurthy said. Capital probably should have been shifted out of Delhi long back and should come somewhere closer. And that's the kind of environment we operated. It was I would say my first 5-6 years were quite difficult because it was very capital intensive. We didn't have the wherewithals to run that kind of business. Banks were not easy with money.
Right.
So by about 91, we actually sold the business which we started with.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's when my dad had sort of become fairly old, and then he was feeling very guilty that he brought his son into business where the boy had other things to do and so on. So there was a bit of a crossroads in the early 90s where I was wondering whether I should continue with business, and he died very shortly after that. So I had this major crossroad, whether should I take the business on or should I quit and do something else. But having been in business for about 6-7 years, and it was, the mindset was at least I had learned a particular trade, I got into a line which I sort of was comfortable with in that period. So I decided, okay, let me move on and take this forward. So I got into trading of steel tubes at that time, which was after selling the manufacturing unit, I got into trading. And that's how I pretty much took off from there.
That's fantastic. So I think before we come to Abhishek and hear the contrarian view, Ranjit, your story, you went to what, New York University for your undergrad, and then what happened? You're working there, right?
Yes, after I finished my undergraduation, I worked for 4 years. I actually didn't really plan on coming back. But then I kind of got bored with my job, and I said, let me go back home and see what kind of business that my dad was doing. And he was always someone who loved to work. So it was always a tough act to follow, and it still is. He's still very active in the business. And so when I came back on a break, he said, why don't you move back home? What's there in the US? When you want to work for someone, why don't you try working here? So that was the kind of debate, and I took it. And he said, you can always try for a couple of years and then go back to do your master's or whatever, which never happened.
And you believed?
And I believed. I got sucked in. But again, I think there was absolutely no pressure, to be honest. I don't think the business was started by him to leave a legacy of any kind. Being first generation, it was more a question of survival, what he wanted to do in his life, and I think that's probably the best example he set. Whereby the value inculcated is do it if you want to, not because you have to. And I guess after 10 years, today really that question doesn't matter anymore. Now you really want to.
So curiously, how were the first few years? What are the kind of problems you face? Your father is there, you're there, you just enjoyed 8 years of life in the US, tremendous amount of freedom.